Initiating unfulfilled projects is the biggest time killer in business. Here's what I mean. So one of the things I bring up to real estate agents, loan officers, and other entrepreneurs is the time spent to initiate a project or a task. What I find is that as you get better at becoming an entrepreneur, you start to learn that not every idea, although it might be a good idea, it isn't worth working on. Because working on ideas, concepts, putting a project together takes time. And there's nothing worse than spending hours and hours on something and not seeing it to the finish line because you decided it just wasn't worth your time. People think being a good entrepreneur is having good ideas. That is not true. Every human being has a good idea. That doesn't mean you should go work on that idea. I have ideas every single day. And you know what? 95% of them, I just say, maybe someday, maybe someday, maybe someday. Because I know the capacity limits that my team has and the capacity limits that I have. The ideas I roll with are ones that I know that I can get excited about and that can have an immediate impact on my business or a future impact on my business when it comes to revenue or decreasing expenses. People that have a core concept of their business, but they start having ideas of like other things they want to do, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're not all in, stop doing it. Because if you half-ass stuff, all you end up with is a broken plan and a bunch of wasted time, and in some cases, a lot of wasted money. I want to give you an example. I had a car that I wanted to get the windows tinted because it's 170,000 degrees in Phoenix. This guy tinted windows for a living. I gave him a call. He said, great, I'll come up to your house. And he lived almost an hour away. Saturday rolls around and no one's there. So I go to do errands. I come back and he's just sitting in the driveway. I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, nothing, I was just waiting for you to get home. So why don't you call me? He goes, I don't know, no big deal. I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking he's gonna get started on the car. So I open up the garage and he's like, oh crap, this window is this type of window and I don't have the right material, so I'll have to come back. I'm like, okay, why didn't you just ask me what type of windows I had to begin with? And he's like, I know, I just didn't think about it. He waited for me, he said, for almost 3 hours. Drove an hour to get there, has to drive an hour to drive home, and he was talking to me for an hour. So he probably spent 7 hours that day. So I'm like, all right, I'll wait for this guy. Didn't even call me back. Didn't call me to tell me he was coming up to my house to do it again. But he probably realized it was just a waste of time to come to my house in the first place. But why did you come to my house in the first place? Like, don't be afraid to turn down something that isn't worth your time. Because what you end up doing is missetting expectations. And what a lot of people do that's so frustrating is after the fact they say, well, I don't know, I'm not really making this, or well, had I known this. I see it all the time with lazy people. When they find out that it's not worth their time, they make excuses why it's not worth their time. And my response is, well, you should have said that in the first place because you wasted my time and you wasted your time, and that's stupid because now I got to go back to square one. Think about how many times you have thought about that to somebody in your life where you're like, this was such a waste of you wasted my time. I just think that the biggest time suck that people seem to have is they waste time on something that's not worth it. Stop doing that. Stop initiating something that you really don't think in your heart of hearts is going to get to the finish line, or you're just not ready for it, or it's not the right time. The right time is what you're working on right now and what you want to get to. As the CEO of your business, what you need to be thinking about is revenue and expenses. That's it. What's revenue? Deals, more business, ancillary business, finding ways to create revenue, because revenue creates capital to spend more money on marketing, which creates what? Revenue. And when we talk about expenses, what are you spending money on that is unnecessary? Because as you get more successful, you're going to start to see that P&L start to tick up with these line items. And you know what? The expenses that kill you, $300 here, $450 here, $250 here. Wait, I haven't even used that product in like 8 months. I've spent $350 a month on this, so I've wasted $2,500. I didn't even realize I was spending money on it. You gotta have a P&L. You need to upload all of your shit to QuickBooks or Quicken or some product so you can see what you're spending money on. And if you don't have assistants or you don't have an accountant or whatever the case is, that's fine. What you need to do is pick up your phone and put a calendar of event series, P&L meeting with myself every month. When you start doing that, you start to understand where your money is being spent, and it's typically on those little things that start to add up. The great entrepreneurs don't look at what they have today. What they look at is where they were before and how hard it took them to get there and the work that it took. That's why they keep grinding. Like for me, that's my biggest motivation is I spent the last 20 years of my life in this game, and I'm not spending my life's work to be lazy. And any good entrepreneur will tell you the same thing. Stop wasting your time on stuff that really does not affect the overall outcome of core business. People get so distracted by like something that they know nothing about or they think is a good idea. If I'm spending 20 hours a week here, I'm not spending 20 hours a week here. And you gotta pay attention to your core business. Stick to what you're good at, master what you're good at, and get better and better at it every single year. And when you turn around in 10 years, 15 years, you got something super valuable and something you're proud of because you worked every single day to build it. Try that game. That one will work.